So Prateek, curious about, your reaction to the filing. It certainly seemed sooner than some people were expecting. What do you make of Square filing to go public now?
So I think there's really three reasons why companies want to go public, right? One of it is that they can actually raise capital at much more attractive terms than they can in the private markets. The second is that they have public currency to potentially make some acquisitions in. And so today, what's happening sort of on Square, right, is that it used to be known as purely a payments company. It is clearly moving toward other areas of software, right? They're introducing things around payroll. They're doing things related to all sorts of other areas of being the operating system for small businesses. And this also gives them a currency potentially to accelerate that sort of growth. And the third area, right, why companies really want to go public is really sort of from a branding perspective. And when we talk about branding today, Square is a very well-known brand in the United States. It has presence in Canada. It has some small presence in Japan today. As they continue to think about international sort of progression and international expansion, a brand is really important for a company to have. And what better way to build a brand than actually to have a public listing, be it on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, right? What kind of confidence is that sort of giving in a brand? And in financial services companies, a brand is incredibly important for one to have in order to be successful. Trust is so important. And brand is something that, is built in a long period of time. And I think going public gives you sort of the opportunity to do that.
And, brand is something that I think is also very important to Jack Dorsey. But it's curious, Leslie, a lot of the talk after we broke this news is that the timing seemed kind of odd. He is the interim CEO of Twitter. He's the most obvious candidate to be CEO of Twitter. So why now when there is this complication?
I think, Jack Dorsey aside, you're seeing a lot of companies that are going public, the tech companies that are going public this year, are the ones who haven't been able to get the private financing or haven't needed the private financing. And so there's one tech company in particular that 18 months before its IPO this year was turned down for that private financing because investors were too concerned about their competitive environment. And so Square could be an example of one of those companies, not entirely sure if it's even gone out to the private market. But as you mentioned, it's interesting with the timing, given that Jack has returned to Twitter. Now, it seems like, based on conversations with sources, that he is committed to remain at Square. Now, that, of course, puts additional pressure on what he's going to do about Twitter.
Right. Now, far fewer tech companies are going public this year as compared to last year. And Prateek, I wonder, you worked with Jack Dorsey. Does the value proposition dramatically change if he's not CEO of Square? How well is Square actually doing? What do you make of some of the things that Leslie just brought up?
So I think the company is doing fine. They have an incredibly strong management team. There's an incredibly strong CFO there. They have a head of business who's incredibly strong. Their head of engineering is incredibly strong. I think one of the things actually people fail to understand at Square, too, it is that it's one of the few women-led executive teams in the Valley. And I think that's a great story. Outside of even Jack, it's an incredibly strong team and one that I think can continue to execute, and they have executed for the last few years, and they will continue to execute, I have no doubt.